Hello and welcome to Midnight Readings. I admit, last week's episode filled me with great cheer, though I did notice one princess wasn't quite there. Luna got her screen time, though the character so suited her. So let's take a look at what Celestia might do in her spare time. This is, let's just say, by obsonance. It was that beautiful peak time of autumn, when all the leaves were still on the trees. The branches were heavy with shades of red and orange and gold. And for that brief moment, it could be imagined that they'd be that way forever. It could be dreamed that the winter would not come this year, and neither the spring after it, nor the summer again after that. They'd just be the forest, with all its fiery colours and the cool drifting breeze that sometimes blew by. Of course, it wouldn't happen. The running of the leaves would be in a week's time, to tear it all down, and leave the tree bare. And leave the trees bare. There were reasons, very good reasons, why there could never be a perpetual autumn. A perpetual autumn. But one could imagine it anyway, if only briefly. In the heart of the forest stood Equestria's own Princess Celestia. She was completely alone, and it had taken much effort for her to get that way. Canterlot was presumably in an uproar about her mysterious disappearance, particularly when she was due for meetings with 3 different ambassadors, 2 distinct relatives, and a concerned citizen. But so what? She felt free for a flickering moment. Not free enough to forget that she was still the princess, and that, inevitably, invariably, she'd be found and brought back. But so what? So what? She was technically away from it all, still in Equestria, but away from the rest of it. The ponies, her loyal subjects. There was no Cyphoriant upper-crust Canterlot ponies in these woods, nor were there any of the rustic Ponyville types who'd throw themselves off a cliff if they so thought their princess would like the sound of a splatter. It was nice to be 10 miles distant from either of them. She was, at any rate, sick of both of them. Not all of them. There were a few good apples in the bunch, so to speak. There were a few ponies who didn't make her despair, but those were far and few between. Most of the populace, though, well, there was something wrong with them. They were shallow or stupid, or, more often than not, both. Plus a few extra character flaws for good measure. And they didn't even know it. Didn't even notice how silly it was to panic and scream over every little thing. Didn't even realise how stupid it was to build their identities around the approval of every flash-in-the-pan pony who achieved some minor fame in Canterlot. Didn't even. Well-meaning idiots, the lot of them. There'd been an infestation in Philadelphia just 2 months ago. Paris sprites. Nasty little buggers. What had brought them? Well, some travelling sales pony, non-pareil, had got the bright spark idea to go sell them as pets. The town, for its part, had been stupid enough to believe that parasites of all things would ever make good pets. A spark, some dry leaves, a fire. And who'd been forced to clean up this mess? Who'd been called out of Canterlot to solve the problem in Philadelphia, set it on itself? Why, the princess, of course. A squirrel scampered by, twisting and turning its way past her legs. Birds who hadn't the good sense to go south already chirped in a lovely little chorus. Yes, this was lovely. The sort of thing a princess needed when she wanted to get away from it all. Not away from it all forever. She'd never get away from it forever. Unless... Suppose, she began, speaking to no pony in particular. Suppose I killed them all. A passing bunny had stopped in mid-hop and stared up at her with its big black eyes. Was it listening? Had it heard? Did it understand? Maybe. Animals were smarter than most ponies gave them credit for, just as most ponies were dumber than they gave themselves credit for. Let's just say, Celestia repeated, now for the pleasure of her little woodland friend, as well as herself, that I killed every pony. Hypothetically, of course, she added, when the bunny's eyes widened. I'm not being serious, but let's just say. A few more animals scurried up to listen, trying to figure out what all the fuss was about. A hedgehog poked its head out from inside a log. A squirrel peered down from a low-hanging branch. It was an audience in the making, but Celestia didn't mind. She welcomed it, even. The more ears there were to hear her crazy ideas, the more sense she could make of her own ramblings. It wouldn't be very difficult, you know, to kill everything, she told them, if I really wanted to. Which I don't, she added again. But if I did... The hedgehog chittered something. She didn't know what it was really trying to say. She took it to mean how. Well, let's just say that I left the sun up too long. Some of the animals did something that sounded a bit like laughter. Of course they would laugh. Celestia knew. They didn't see it yet. Let me finish, she said patiently. Say I left the sun up too long. Not too long. Just a month. Maybe 2. That doesn't sound very bad, does it? More time to frolic and play. And do what you want before going to sleep, yes? Most of the animals nodded. An owl, listening sleepily from the inside of a trunk, silently disagreed. But that's what they'd all think at first. They'd say, this is a little strange, of course, but no pony really questioned it. They don't ask questions if they think it's a good idea. Well, maybe Twilight Sparkle does, but she questions everything. The bunny made some angry scratching sounds. Get to the point already, it seemed to be saying. The rest of the audience followed suit and made noises to a similar effect. Well, if they insisted. And without any of them realizing, it would happen. All the water would dry up, slowly at first, too slowly for any pony to notice. But all the rivers and lakes and ponds in Equestria would eventually evaporate, little by little. No night time for them to cool off, you see. Just the heat from the sun for days and days and days. The plants would shrivel and die. They'd try to keep them for a while, maybe schedule a few more storms, but it would only be temporary. The water wouldn't last. Sooner or later all the crops will wilt and turn brown. They'd still have food stores, but those wouldn't last either. And even if they did, what would they drink? The forests would burn at some point, dried out so thoroughly that just the tiniest flare would set them afire, would set off a fire. Probably the towns would burn down too. Only Canterlot is anything approaching fireproof. Small consolation that. Once all the water's gone and the food's gone too, and everything's dead, It'll just take that one last wildfire to wipe out everything completely, and make the land a desert proper. So that's what we'd have when all is said and done. A desert. A vast sprawling nothingness where Equestria used to be. If I left the sun up too long. All the animals were staring up at her with wide-opened eyes. Not the tiniest noise could be heard in the forest at that point, not even from the birds. She could just tell that they were all thinking the same thing. Why would you do that? I wouldn't, she assured them. I'm not going to. I love all my subjects, even when they're being very stupid. But if we just say that I did. She swallowed and thought about it for a second more. If we just say that I did, maybe I'd finally. But before she could go on, a voice could be heard passing through the trees.
Princess, are you out there?
It sounded very much like a royal guard. Oh dear, they've found me at last, said Celestia, just the tiniest bit annoyed that she'd been interrupted. I'd hoped for a little bit more time.
Princess? The voice repeated, closer and louder this time.
I'm here, she called back. Follow the sound of my voice.
Stay where you are, Princess. We're coming for you.
Soon enough, a pair of gold-armoured stallions trotted up and bowed before the princess.
We are glad we found you, Princess, said the first. Every pony was much distressed to hear that you'd gone missing. There's much work to be done in Canterlot, added the second. The ambassadors are all furious with you, and there's talk of a petition requesting the princess pay more attention to the state of the... Of course there is, Celestia sighed. Let's go then. Come on. She turned to her new animal friends and gave them a wink before trotting off, flanked on both sides by her guards. A minute passed. 2. Hoofsteps in the distance. And then... silence. The animals looked at each other, and then at the sky. They saw the autumn sun shining brightly above them. They prayed very hard that it would go down soon. That was Let's Just Say by Obstinance. I can imagine Celestia thinking about this. A way to escape and just be herself for once. Luckily though, she's a bit too kind-hearted for that sort of thing. Though she's lived forever, and I'm pretty sure Luna would jump in and say no to this sort of thing. I hope you all enjoyed. Stay brony!